Hi guys, I hope you're okay. This is Daniel. So I got COVID and just thought to share my experiences because it was a very surreal experience. I basically took a test after starting to feel a little bit unwell. This was a couple of weeks ago. I didn't go into work because I started to feel really tired, had aching joints, and a couple of days after that, I developed a fever. And it was really weird because the one thing that people didn't really talk about in terms of having fever and delirium, was that you can have lots of really weird psychosomatic effects when you're under the influence of a fever. So the way I can describe it is like when you have a really bad dream, or you have a dream and you try to explain it to somebody, but then it doesn't make any type of sense. I was laying down on my pillows and I kept having thoughts about having to register my pillows for something. I don't know what the hell that meant, but it was a looping thought that kept reoccurring every single night. I knew it was going to happen and I couldn't escape it. It was really weird. So that was happening. Things started to get a little bit worse when I was getting continual fevers, and it was probably maybe 5 or 6 days into it where I experienced the respiratory issues where my breathing just got very laboured. I'd walked to the toilet, which isn't very far from my bedroom, and then by the time I got upstairs, I literally felt like I'd run a marathon. It was absolutely insane in terms of the deterioration I experienced on my lungs. Like right now, you can still probably hear that I'm still quite raspy. But generally, what happened was is that I had the thought that I was starting to deteriorate quite quickly, and I knew that I needed some external intervention quite quickly. So I'd taken a PCR test, which is basically the official test you have to take to determine that you actually have COVID. Whilst I was waiting for the hospital or the courier to come and collect that PCR test, I started to experience real problems breathing again. So contacted the ambulance and they came and collected me within 20 minutes. They did an assessment on my oxygen levels, which were roughly below 80%. Just to give you some context, anything below 80% is deemed life-threatening. So, or you can have long-term impacts on your organs if you are at that level for a period of time. So I was taken to hospital, taken to accident and emergency, where for 12 hours I was in isolation, and they did an x-ray on my chest and discovered that my left lung was inflamed. So I couldn't breathe in for more than 2 seconds without having a strong sense of feeling quite tight and congested on my chest, and I couldn't breathe properly. It was really horrendous. They instantly put me on some oxygen. So they gave me a canister. It was connected to a canister under the hospital bed that I was on. I was breathing from that essentially for the best part of 3 days. And I'd wear that when I was sleeping at night because you're having to have a direct flow of oxygen into your body, because essentially what's happening is your lungs, whilst they're healing because it's a respiratory virus, the white blood cells go into overdrive and start to produce more and more white blood cells within the lungs, which is healing you. But at the same time, because the lungs are transporters of oxygen via red blood cells, it means that in the process of healing, you can actually feel like you're drowning as well. So it's really weird. Um, but going back to the hospital, I was put on a ward, and during that time on the ward, I was in recovery. I was receiving lots of medical attention from the NHS, which is the National Health Service in the UK, in the form of steroid tablets, which was to reduce the inflammation on my lungs. And I also received Enoxaparin injections, which are effectively blood thinners. So when you've had COVID, you're more prone to getting blood clots within your system. So essentially, I had to have these injections to make sure that my blood was circulating properly. It was just the most surreal experience I think I can ever really articulate, because there are so many people who go from having varying symptoms, from losing the sense of taste and smell, which is something that never happened to me, all of the other things that happened, I just never anticipated. And it's just very interesting to see how the difference from being diagnosed with something like this to deteriorating quite quickly and then finding yourself under threat of potentially losing your life. I mean, at one stage when I was in my bedroom, I was thinking, do I need to like start thinking about clearing my browser history and sending messages to people that I love them, because I genuinely felt like I was actually going to die. And not to get into too many details, but I made arrangements to try and get some oxygen canisters from Amazon. And when I found out that they were going to be estimated time of arrival on Saturday, I think it was, and bearing in mind this was the Tuesday or Thursday, the days get mixed up, I just instinctively knew it was going to be too long. And I thought, if I leave this for too long, I'm going to possibly die. So when I spoke to the ambulance and everything was kicked into full gear, it was just, it felt like the right thing to do. It felt like the right time to really take action. And all I can say is I witnessed a couple of things on the wards where I was staying. There were lots of people there who were older than I was. And a lot of them experienced very similar symptoms, but they just weren't listening to what the nurses and doctors were saying. And unfortunately, I did witness a couple of people go into the ICU and then potentially, well, they did pass away, they died. And my warning, I guess, to people at this particular stage is, if you do suspect that you have COVID or you do find that you have a positive result, the key thing not to do is to panic. I think it's just basically about making sure that you just do what you need to do for yourself, listen to your body, contact the emergency services and get yourself seen as soon as possible. During this time, I had a very, very severe case of loss of appetite. I started off at 89 kilograms, and again, this is an ongoing thing. I keep talking about my weight, but what was really interesting was that I effectively lost nearly a stone during 5 days. And to put that into context, I mean, that's essentially all the lockdown weight that I gained, basically. So it was a bit of a blessing in disguise, because I am actually at my ideal weight now, which is probably not the healthiest way of getting there, but it's just one of those weird side effects, because I felt that my body was almost purging a lot of the bad things that I've been eating during that time. And my instincts was that I needed to just heal. I needed my body to do its thing without being distracted, without having to worry about digestion. And yeah, that was just one of the side effects of this whole crazy experience. So, not to go on for too long, because I think videos like this can be quite dour, depressive, but at the same time, I'm trying to be really candid and really informative with people and letting you know what I experienced. And I haven't gone into too many details, with other people who were directly affected, but essentially, that is my COVID story in a nutshell. Currently off work, I'm taking these steroid tablets, which I think are actually quite fantastic. Might be a bit worried about how addicted I might get to the steroids, because they are enhancing my home workouts. And yeah, I guess that's just the side effects of giving your body a boost, really, because you're trying to give yourself a fighting chance to get back to some type of normality. But just talking at the length that I am now, I literally couldn't have this conversation last week because the airflow was just completely restricted. So my concluding thoughts are that I am glad I had this experience. I think it was a case of when, not if. I think it's very inevitable. I haven't taken the vaccine. I don't have the desire to take the vaccine. People might have very strong opinions about that, for or against it, but I still think it's very experimental. I'm not too sure how I feel about the long-term impact of that, but I do have antibodies in my system that will be working to, negate the effects of COVID for the next 3 to 6 months. So all I would say is just trust your immune system. Always follow advice from your doctor. Don't take this video as medical advice, because it's not. It's just me sharing my story. But if it helps somebody, then I think I've done my part, and hopefully it's very informative and gives you some insight into what to deal with if you ever get COVID. So they're my quick thoughts about COVID. I'm going to conclude the video now because it's going on for quite a while. If you have got any stories to share, I'd love to hear from you. If you've just been affected by what's been said, I'd also love to hear from you as well. It'd be interesting to get lots of different opinions about this, because I think it is quite an interesting topic, and I was quite reluctant to make this video because I didn't really want to talk about something that was quite controversial and quite personal, but likewise, you know, it's something that's actually happened to me, so I think it really feels appropriate to share. Like I said, I haven't gone into too many gory details, but if you've got anything to say, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say, and hopefully I can respond and give something that might be quite informative. But anyway, I'm babbling now. Thank you very much. Take care. Speak soon. Goodbye.